Hey guys, BuildZoid here, and so today we're going to be taking a look at the overclocking results of this here memory kit. So first of all, it's made by Antec, which is kind of new. Which my conclusion for that is it's not actually made by Antec. Antec is just buying memory sticks from somebody else and rebranding them, which is, like, that's not really surprising. Ultimately, there's not that many, like, the RAM manufacturing world is kind of there's not that many manufacturers, but there's a lot of brands. So, yeah. But anyway, so, Antec has now started rebranding memory, and they came out with this something relatively sort of interesting memory kit here. It's a Series 3 Samsung B-Die, right? 16 gigs, 2x8. So, yeah, it's just single rank Samsung B-Die memory sticks. Rated spec to 2400 megahertz, 1515 31 timings, dual channel, right? And it seems to have an like AMD in the part number, which is kind of interesting right there. But yeah, and it's relatively cheap. Like a lot of 3200 CL14 kits and 3600 CL17 and 16 and 15 and all of the like well-known B-Die kits, right? Those regularly go for in excess of 170 quid. I recently picked up a 3600 CL17 for 167 before shipping, but well, obviously this is before shipping as well, but I recently picked up a kit for 167 quid. That's probably B-Die. I think it's B-Die. We'll find out when I get it. I'm going to make a video about it like this one, hopefully, probably, maybe. I'm not sure. It depends on how well this video works out, but yeah, so this is like really cheap for B-Die, right? So obviously I jumped on this because it's like, yes, cheap B-Die. My daily system needs an upgrade. And my daily system, for those of you unaware, is runs a Ryzen 7 1700, and right now it's on 16 gigs of RAM, so I want to upgrade to 32. And so I bought this stuff because I was like, well, it's Samsung B-Die. How bad could it possibly be? And that's where I made my first big mistake. But anyway, so I did buy this, and I did test it on the MSI X470 Gaming Pro Carbon motherboard, and I tested it on that motherboard just because I kind of like that motherboard. It's really odd. Like, objectively, that motherboard's not great in terms of, like, its BIOS options and everything, but I just find it really easy to work with compared to, like, Asus motherboards or something like that. Like, don't get me wrong, I think the Crosshair 7 Hero is a freaking incredible board, and if I'm going to be taking a motherboard on liquid nitrogen, I'm not going to take anything else, but for just kind of testing memory, I've really enjoyed so far working with the MSI boards. So basically I took out the Carbon out of all of the boards and used that. Ultimately, I don't think there would be a difference if I used the Crosshair. So yeah, it was just kind of personal preference. I wanted to play with the Carbon some more, so I went and played with the Carbon. Sue me. Anyway, so I did test it on that motherboard, and anyway, let's take a look at the results. So here we have, I did also test a whole bunch of other memory kits, which is why this took relatively long. To do. It actually took me longer to figure out how I want to shoot the video, because I did get a bunch of results and then didn't really do anything with them for a while. So first, let's take a look at the memory sticks here, which we're just going to open them in preview. I have another image viewing program, and unfortunately that one doesn't work on secondary monitors very well for some reason. Anyway, so here we have the memory kit, and yeah, we can clearly see that is Samsung B-Die right there, right? We have which one? This one shows it pretty well. 5WB. I mean, it's not super clear, but that's 5WB. And that 5WB right there, that tells you this is B-Die. This is the, like, if you just read the K4A8G085WB, that's actually a part number. If you stick that into Samsung's website, it'll come up with their B-Die part number. And this BCPB part right here, right, the BCPB is a binning spec. So BCPB for Samsung B-Die is by Samsung's website, if I remember correctly, it is 2133 megahertz, 0 to 85 degrees, 85 degrees Celsius. So that's the spec on the memory IC. So this is B-Die. Like, the only way this isn't B-Die is if somebody went and like scraped the original part numbers off of these memory chips and then relabeled them. Which I think is like that. I think that's conspiracy theory territory. That seems really unlikely. So that's the memory chips themselves. As you can see, we have this what a lot of overclockers call the RGB PCB layout, where you basically have one group of memory chips over here, one group of memory chips over there. It's also known as the A2 layout. And the PCB part number you can see right here is KO8495A. And funnily enough, my Team Group Extreme sticks, right? So the Team Group Extreme T-Force Extreme memory kits that I use for all of my competitive benchmarking, those actually use the same exact PCB. So that's just kind of it. Well, at least they have the same part number on there. I'm not 100% certain on the PCB situation, but it is very possible that, you know, like the kits are just like that, you know, these PCBs get mass produced at this point, so it's just cheaper to buy this PCB anyway, and then slap some memory chips on it, or they're buying the complete sticks and these are like binning rejects from, I don't know, somebody. That's also possible, right? So yeah, anyway, so that's the PCB right there. So the PCB, like, you know, on initial inspection, I'm not really seeing anything that would be problematic. It is worth noting that like an odd thing I noticed about these memory sticks is in Typhoon Burner, they actually pick up as BCRC. So like you can clearly see that these chips are labeled BCPB, but there's another, like, one of these binning, what would you call it? It's not a number, but binning identifier, and the other identifier is BCRC. And if you actually run Typhoon Burner on these sticks, for whatever reason, it identifies them as BCRC, which I don't get, because it clearly says on the bloody chips that they're not BCRC, right? So I don't know, maybe they are relabeled, but I still find that really, really hard to believe that that would actually be the case. I think maybe the SPD program, like the SPD chip probably is just programmed wrong or whatever, and nobody cares to fix it, right? It's a low-end memory kit. But yeah, so they are BCPB, and I did check with a few other, like, people, like, what their memory kits have for memory ICs. I haven't written down what's on my Extreme sticks, but BCPB is actually, like, really common. Even on, like, high-end memory kits that clock really well, it'll often be BCPB. And the logic I can see in that is that ultimately when Samsung bins their memory kits, right, that BCPB identifier doesn't really tell you if that kit is not capable of 3200 CL14 or 3600 CL17 or whatever, right? It's not like, oh, the kit it's labeled BCPB, it's never going to go above 2133. It's just like, this is what Samsung wants to sell it as. Samsung also has a bin that's 3200 megahertz at like CL22, right? So that's not exactly a great bin either. So yeah, I wouldn't put too much. So as far as I can tell, there's the like binning identifier doesn't seem to have a whole lot of value. But don't quote me on that. I am really not a memory expert. I've not tested a whole bunch of, like, I've not tested a lot of memory sticks. I'm really not that good at overclocking the memory I do have. And just overall, it's just, yeah, you know, like, I wish I was better at RAM overclocking, but the only way I'm going to get better at it is doing it. And in the meantime, I'm just going to kind of share my results as I produce them. And so sometimes like, especially these early results should be considered relatively sketchy. Okay, just sketchy results, but yeah, so there's my defense, and that's the memory stick. So let's take a look at what they can actually do. So here we have bone stock settings, and they default to 2400, 15, 15, 15. And interestingly enough, if we flip through a few of these, wrong results there. Nope. Where's the one with the SPD profile? There. These don't register on the SPD profile. And yes, I did test these on Intel, and I realized it wasn't really going anywhere, so I gave up on that. Like, they were still just as bad as they were on AMD, so I was just like, okay, well, this isn't going anywhere. This stuff is garbage. I'm not going to bother any further. But yeah, so you can see that for some reason the SPD doesn't pick up in CPU-Z. It does pick up on the side of the motherboard and stuff, but I don't, like, CPU-Z doesn't seem to like these sticks. So that's another piece of software that doesn't seem to like them, because Typhoon Burner also misidentifies the memory chips. So that's kind of interesting. But anyway, so 2400 CL, defaults to 17, 17, 17, 39, and we get about 5.1 thousand points in memory performance for Geekbench 3 multi-core. And this is really what we're going to be looking at the the multi-core memory performance. That's a pretty good, like, it's not a realistic memory performance indicator, right? Like, if you double this score, it doesn't mean, it doesn't really mean a whole lot for your real world workloads, but it's a good way to test memory kits because it's relatively sensitive. And yeah, so I just use this because it works well. Like, I like it for just, being a relative memory performance indicator. It's not a great, it's not bulletproof, but it's just an easy way to check memory performance, to get a rough idea of it anyway. Now then, so moving on from bone stock, we move on to the Xmp profile, because surprise, surprise, this memory kit, even though it's not supposed to have an Xmp profile, it does have an Xmp profile. And that Xmp profile is spec'd at 3000 megahertz, CL16, 18, 18, 38. So that's what this result right here is. And yeah, you get 6,000 points at that result. And that's actually like a pretty common spec for a lot of memory kits these days. You can get 3200 CL16, 18, 18, and you can get 30,000 16, 18, 18. You can also get 3000 15, 17, 17. And like there's like, so this is not like a super special XMP profile or anything like that. It's relatively common. And yeah, this is the kind of performance that spits out. I've not adjusted anything. This is just like load up XMP profile and go with it. And that's also why it went to 2933 instead of 3000. But again, that's just what the motherboard decided to pick it up as. And yeah, so let's start doing some actual overclocking on these. And it's bad. So this is 3200 megahertz, 18, 18, 18, 40. Now the timings could have probably, like, I could have tightened up the timings a bit. But the thing is, we're going to max out the kit pretty soon, and it doesn't get better. So 6,451 451 points. So yeah, we picked up some performance over the XMP profile, as you'd expect. We've picked up some clock speed. We've not really changed our timings a whole lot. Like, the XMP profile isn't that much better, right? We've picked up some clock speed. The timings have basically changed, stayed the same. And actually, if you look at my sub timings, oh, and here they misread, because we can clearly see TRC is 68 right there. But I also set up some basic tweaks to the subtimings that are pretty, like, should be stable, in my experience. So the thing is, this kit, however, doesn't tighten very well. So the reason why we're looking at like 18, 18, 40 is because at CL12, this memory kit is not stable at 2400 megahertz, as in it's not even capable of passing Geekbench 3 stable. I'm not talking about memtest here. I mean, it's not gonna finish freaking Geekbench 3. Geekbench 3 is relatively sensitive to memory, okay? Like, it's way more sensitive than, say, Cinebench. Cinebench, you can run memory settings that, spew out errors like no tomorrow, and you'll probably still finish. Geekbench 3 will generally lock up or fail, like lock up the system or fail the bench, or the program will stop responding. But yeah, so if you can't pass freaking Geekbench 3, you can just forget about the stability. So CL12, 2400 megahertz doesn't work. And so I wrote those results, like, at that point it was just like, well, that's not even worth taking a screenshot of, because that's trash. Similarly, 2666 megahertz doesn't work at CL14, which is also trash. Like, terrible, terrible freaking results. And so, yeah, that was just a freaking catastrophe in terms of memory overclocking, and that's why we're only doing, like, high-frequency loose timings here. And then, ultimately, where the kit maxes out is 3400 megahertz, 1840, right? So if you look at it from the perspective of, well, it's a 2400 CL15 spec memory kit, and it overclocks by almost 50%, that sounds pretty good on paper. But the performance really doesn't make up for it, because a lot of the things like TRCDWR on E-die and B-die, on like good kits of B-die and E-die, you should be able to set that timing all the way to 8. It's at 18. It sucks, right? That's a pretty major problem. TRRDs, like TRRDS and TRRDL, I tried to tighten them. They didn't like that. That wasn't stable. TFAL, same situation. TWR, more so. Basically, TRRDSCL and TWRSCL over here, same situation. TRFC doesn't like being pushed low either. And that's something I've noticed with a lot of, like, generic 2400 megahertz spec. Well, I've not tested that many generic 2400 megahertz spec kits, but I have, like, a 2400 CL16 spec AFR kit. And that has also, like, it doesn't like low TRFC. So yeah, the TRFC here is just whatever the motherboard went to, because quite frankly, trying to push that down was not being very productive. Like, generally, I couldn't run it that much lower than what the motherboard defaulted to anyway. So that's great. Huge fan of that. TCWL isn't a... The TCWL still runs 2 down from TCL, so that's okay, but not great. And just generally everything was just garbage. And the performance reflects that, right? We're getting 6,500 points, which I got bad news for you. 3.1 gigahertz on a well set up AFR, like, well, it's not even well set up. It's just like, if you have an AFR memory kit, you can probably beat this 6,500 points. Like, you should be pretty easily able to beat that with AFR. With EDI, you should just completely crush that. With BDI, you should be getting like 1,000 points more. So yeah, and we'll get to those results. Anyway, here we also have another 3200. Why do we have another 3200? Oh, well, I took a lot of random screenshots, I guess. But there we go. So here we have some Intel results, and this is just bone stock, but, 3000. So that's the Xmp profile. And then we have some overclocking on Intel. So on Intel, it also maxes out at 3400 CL18. Funnily enough, it can actually boot and take like CPU. You can take like a screenshot of 3600 megahertz, but you're not actually going to be able to run it anything at 3600 megahertz. So that kind of sucks. Timings still don't it doesn't tighten properly, and just everything kind of sucks. And yeah, ultimately, like, it did do better at 3200 megahertz. Like, I could run it at 15, 16, 16, but yeah, it still wasn't an incredible achievement. But yeah, it's really weird. Like, you'd think if it does 3200 at, almost 3200, 15, 16, 16, this is at 1.5 volts. You'd think that if you went down to CL14, then like 2666 megahertz has got to work, right? Like, your frequency is so much lower. Why wouldn't CL14 work at that point? I don't know. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. It's not stable at all. Like, it would get into Windows, and then it would lock up on the benchmark, and I was just like, okay, this isn't worth testing, because it doesn't actually run. So yeah, but on Intel, it's not quite as bad, but it's still pretty damn bad as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, that's the Intel test result. That's also the Intel test results for this kit. But let's compare it to some of the other kits. So first up, EDI. Now this isn't really a fair comparison, because this is a 4000 megahertz EDI kit. So this is like, first of all, it's half the capacity. So it's 4 gig sticks instead of 8 gig sticks. And it's freaking 4000 megahertz by spec. This is, like, when this kit was still available, it was pretty expensive, right? When it was relevant, before BDI became a thing, this was relatively expensive, and this was like serious overclocking RAM. Yeah, this stuff absolutely just destroys it. So this is bone stock, and as you can see, at bone stock, it's actually running a bit worse, because it defaults to 2133 instead of 2400, but once we start doing some overclocking, it gets a lot better, a lot faster. So here we have 2666 megahertz CL12, and as you can see, we're already doing almost 6,000 points, so we're almost beating that. Well, actually, if we ran this a few times, margin of error would probably get us to beat it, but it's almost doing the same performance as that kit was doing at 3000 CL16, just because the timings on this are so much better, right? And TRC-DWR here, we can run it at 8, right? This is one of the things that, yeah, so I'm not sure how consistent that is, because evidently I have a BDI kit that doesn't do that, right? So initially I was like, every kit of BDI has to do TRC-DWR 8. The Antec one doesn't. So it also doesn't do 10 or 12. So that went away pretty quick. But yeah, so we're almost doing the same performance on an EDI kit at this point, because it just times way better. We can still do CL12 at 2866 megahertz, but 2933 would actually crash at this point. Subtimings are still, like, they're pretty tight. And the end result is we're now getting 6,500 points, right? So you can see how, because this runs much better timings at lower frequency, we can actually get the same performance as that other kit. So we can get basically the same performance as that other kit was doing at 3,400 megahertz, which is just great. And if we go up, right, to 3200 CL14, 191932, this is just one of those things about EDI, and I think my kit is actually pretty bad about TRCD and TRP. Like, they need to be really, really loose. At 4000, like, by spec, this kit runs 25s, right, for those settings. So anyway, but at 3200 megahertz with some pretty good subtimings and okay primaries, we're doing 7,250 points. So at this point, this is just way, way better in terms of performance than that Antec kit. So basically, what I'm trying to point out, if you are considering of buying that memory kit for like benchmarking purposes, don't buy yourself an EDI kit. It's going to be faster. You could also probably buy yourself a Hynix CFR kit, and that would also probably be faster. But I've not tested a CFR kit. I'll see if I can get one sometime and test that as well. I really do want to test a lot more RAM, because RAM is something that I don't get at all, and just want to do, like, get better at it and just have a better, because I hate just, you know, it's like, I don't like the current situation where it's just like, oh, if you want good RAM, you have to buy BDI. It's like, I want to run it in my daily system. It doesn't need to be the best stuff ever. It just needs to be good enough, right? And it's kind of hard to figure out what's good enough. Evidently, really cheap junk bin BDI is not good enough. But anyway, so here we have the EDI, right? And it's just absolutely crushing it. And then I've gone even higher frequency. So this is actually doing 3,600 megahertz at this point. 16, 22, 22, 34. So really, you know, we're starting to loosen out at this point quite a lot. But damn, right? 7,408 points. It's just killing it. So yeah, great like the performance is great. Now, 3,600 megahertz honestly is sketchy to try run on Ryzen. Just like the memory controllers generally, like, well, I've heard that the new AGSA doesn't make it possible to get really high, like higher frequencies stable again, but ultimately, I would say if you don't want to, you know, spend hours and hours and hours and hours fine-tuning your memory settings, I would recommend that you stop at like 3,400-ish, right? 3,466 to 3,200 megahertz, somewhere in that range. Just stop. You're going to have 90, like most of the performance that you can get by going higher, right? Like, keep in mind, that's, like, this is 3,200 megahertz. We're doing 7,250. This is 3,600 megahertz, and we picked up 200 points, right? Like, not a huge improvement there. Partly because this is EDI, and it loosens out quite hard as the frequency goes up. But even with BDI, it's not going to be like, it's not necessarily worth it to go way up on the frequency. And here we are back to stock. So let's take a look at some of the other memory. Team Group 2400 CL16 AFR. Now, this is not a retail memory kit. This is a, basically, you could call it an engineering sample memory kit. Basically, I asked Team Group to give me a 2400, like a generic AFR memory kit. I didn't even tell them what spec. I just said, I want an AFR memory kit so I can try out how bad AFR overclocking is on Ryzen. On Ryzen, and they said, like, first they were like, are you sure you want an AFR kit, because we're going to send you something and it's not going to boot. And I'm like, yes, I'm quite sure I want an AFR kit. Like, I just want to see how bad it can be, and if it doesn't boot, oh well, it doesn't boot. I can still use it on my Intel systems, right? So they sent me a AFR kit, and as you can and it's not a retail kit, it's not like a retail product, and as you can clearly see, it's rated at 2400 1616, right? 2400 1616 1639, and it defaults to that, and it gets roughly the same performance as that Antec Series 3 BDI on default settings, because it defaults to 2400. So no surprises there, and it does boot. So, and I've not actually had a problem with this kit working on any AMD motherboard I've tried so far. It does not overclock very well, but it works, especially at stock settings, and you can actually overclock it, well, it doesn't overclock very well relative to, like, good BDI and EDI. Compared to the Antec Series 3 stuff, I mean, if you're just looking at the frequency, sure, it's not amazing. If you're actually just looking at the performance, then this is basically on par, as we're about to see. So here we have this is, I think, 2733 megahertz, 12, 13, 13. So AFR has this advantage in its TRCD and TRP, over eDie, except it loses TRC-DWR, right? You can't run the TRC-DWR quite as low, but it does have an advantage in TRCD and TRP. So at 2733 megahertz, we're running 12, 13, 13, 26, and we get about 6,050 points. So pretty good performance, right? At very low, relatively low frequency. So that's nice. Can it go higher? Yes, it can. And here's where it actually maxes out. And these are settings that should be pretty much close to stable. I've stabilized settings similar to this in the past for my APU overclocking video. There I had like 31, 33, CL 14, 17, 17. Like I basically copied my primary timings from my results for that video. So yeah, similar settings. And as you can see, we're getting 6,704 points. So yeah, we're beating that, Antec Series 3 B-die kit by 200 points, while being like 200, 300 megahertz lower clocked. Yeah, because this has timings that don't completely bloody suck, and that does. So, yeah, ultimately, AFR, it's not going to be a complete catastrophe, especially if you know what you're doing. You should be able to get some pretty decent performance out of it. So that's our comparison point for the AFR kit here. And then we're back to stock. So we're going to get out of this one, and we're going to go to the last kit. So here's the real B-die, the good B-die, the fast B-die. And unfortunately, this defaults to 2133 megahertz, so it loses if you're just running it without XMP or anything. But yeah, so it loses because, without XMP. But once you enable XMP, it spits out 6,500 points. Because on the MSI Gaming Pro Carbon, I think it gave me an option to try run the 3733 megahertz profile, but I didn't try to do that, which incidentally it would boot, but it wasn't very stable. So I ran the 3466 megahertz profile, and that one worked great. And we're already doing almost 6,500 points at 18, 20, 20, 39, 81. Like terrible timings, right? Absolutely garbage timings, and we're already doing almost 6,500 points. Because this kit actually, it clocks pretty well. And once we start overclocking it manually, it gets a lot better. 3466, 14, 13, 13, 32, and we're doing almost 8,000 points. And I think if you spent enough time with this, you could probably get your 8,000 points as well. But maybe not daily stable. But yeah, so this is like... This is what I was hoping for. Like, I was hoping that Antec Series 3 Samsung B-die would get at least somewhat close to something like this. I was thinking, like, hey, if it did, I don't know, 3,400, 16, 15, 15, or like 16, 16, 16, right? Just flat 16. That'd be pretty cool. If the sub timings don't suck, that would be pretty cool. If the TRC-DWR did 8, like it should, that'd be pretty cool. But it didn't. So yeah, it doesn't get anywhere near this performance, right? It's like 1,300 points lower than this is, which is why I don't like it so much. And then if we go to low frequency testing, right? So here we are at 3,200 megahertz, 12, 12, 12, 32, which is just like a really easy setting to run on B-die at 1.5 volts, on good B-die anyway. The Antec stuff, it doesn't have a chance at this. Like, you could try all day, and 1.8 volts, and it's still not going to post this. But yeah, this spits out about 6,800 points. So, yeah. Real B-die, well, real B-die. It's all real B-die, but this is like proper, like obviously, and like Team Group bins their memory chips to some extent to make the XMP profile of this memory kit possible, right? Which is 37, 33, 18, 20, 20. And admittedly, my kit is even supposedly binned even better than that. But yeah, like this is actually good, right? This is what I'd be somewhere in this like in that 7,000 points range. A good B-die kit should be hitting that daily stable, and the Antec stuff just doesn't even have a chance at doing those kinds of settings because it doesn't even boot at 36. Like it doesn't even do 3618 at all. You need like 20 for 3600 to boot. So yeah, this stuff, even though it seems to be like this is, as I said, like the part number on this stuff seems to be the same as on my Team Group Extreme Sticks, And yeah, and it is B die as far as I can tell. This stuff seems to be binning rejects as far like that's my current theory, is this is somebody's binning rejects. So they bought a bunch of B die from Samsung, they assembled a bunch of memory sticks, they tested all of them, they found out these suck, and they sold them off to Antec, and Antec is now rebranding them. And I wouldn't have a problem with that. I wouldn't have a problem with that if it weren't for the price. It's 139 quid. Let's see what other memory kits we can find at 139 quid on the overclockers.co.uk website, because this is, as far as I know, the only place you can currently buy this stuff. So we're going to just compare it to other memory kits on like the only retailer where you can get this, right? Just because other retailers might just have much different pricing schemes, and it would make this kit probably look even worse. So we're not going to go out price hunting. We're just going to get some, just some perspective, a little bit. And right off the bat, you can get this, right? Which is just like 3600 CL19 or this, 3600 CL19 or this, 3600. You get the idea. This stuff is, if we actually look at it, it comes with heat spreaders. It's spec'd at 3600 megahertz. And this set of timings, the 1939, as far as I know, that's an indicator that this is either Hynix CFR or CJR, both of which work relatively well on Ryzen and should actually be able to run that 3600 megahertz 1919 profile. Or you can, knock it down a notch and tighten up the timings. If you pump up the voltage, you should be able to tighten up the timings as well. So this is like a lot better RAM, right, at the same price. Admittedly, it's on sale right now, but it is a lot better, right? It's 3600 megahertz, so, and if you stick it into like an Intel system, this stuff should absolutely bloody fly. So yeah, it's just just like right off the bat, we have a memory kit here, which is just spec'd better, same price, has heat sinks, just no contest. This is a better buy than that. And it gets worse as we keep going down. Well, it doesn't really get any worse, but it doesn't get better as we go through the other memory kits available. So these aren't all that impressive, right? These are relatively on the specs, just 2400 megahertz. But if we go to page 3, we start running into things like 3000 megahertz, 16, 18, 18, right? So this is the same spec as that XMP profile on that Antec kit, except this has heat spreaders and an actual, like that XMP profile, like these are rated to do 3000 megahertz, right? These are tested by the manufacturer to do 3000 megahertz. That Antec kit, I think that SPD profile is just a leftover from somewhere. Like, I think they forgot to reprogram the SPD or something after, like, when making those sticks. Because they shouldn't have an XMP profile on them, right? Like, if you go by their spec, there shouldn't be an XMP profile. I don't know why there is. So yeah, that's not great right off the bat, right? So you can get kits with like validated XMP profiles for the same timings, same price, with heat spreaders and LEDs. So that's great. Then we have a kit here, which is 3000 megahertz, 15, 17, 17. So 3000 megahertz, but better timings. And that's actually validated, and it has heat spreaders and everything. Then we have these two kits here, which admittedly are on a deep sale, and so are these actually. That's a lot of sales actually. But these are on a pretty heavy sale right now, and they're like 3000, 15, 15, 15, 35. These timings are like light years ahead of those other of the Antec Series 3 XMP profile, right? And the thing is like we shouldn't even be comparing against the bloody XMP profile, because that XMP profile isn't really validated for those sticks, or at least it probably isn't. And the other thing is like ultimately the like, at this point you might be pointing out, oh, but BuildZoid, you don't know that this isn't good. Like, this could be AFR, and if it's AFR, it's going to be a pain to overclock. But I just showed you that if you actually manually overclock your AFR, you can get pretty good results out of it, right? And second of all, if you are buying this kit right here, right, the reason you're buying this is because it's Samsung B-Die. And if you're buying a 2400 megahertz kit for 140 quid because it's Samsung B-Die, you're buying it because you want to overclock it. And so you probably know what you're doing with your RAM. And in that case, you would be better served with a memory kit that, like, even if it's AFR, and even if you're on Ryzen, if you know what you're doing with your freaking memory, you should be able to get an AFR kit to outperform this stuff, right? Like, you should have no problem doing that. And that's why basically it's just like, yeah, sure, this might not be B-die, but I'm pretty sure whatever it is going to ultimately outperform this stuff. Because this stuff, unless there's like huge binning variance in these, that's also possible that they're just completely unsorted, and I just got like bottom 0.1%. And so if you got like a top 0.1%, you might get something absolutely incredible. But personally, that sounds like a really bad gamble for 140 quid, right? If it was cheap, then I'd say sure, whatever, right? Like, it's 100 quid. If it sucks, it sucks, and it's still 16 gigs of RAM. But this is 16 gigs of, in my opinion, sketchy B-die. And if I wanted 16 gigs of sketchy RAM, I can go a lot cheaper than 139 quid, right? We can go to like, what can we get? What's the cheapest 16 gigs? Here, right? 100 quid, 16 gigs of RAM, same freaking XMP profile, right? 3000 megahertz, 16, 18, 18, 36. Yeah, this is about as, like, this is equally sketchy, except much cheaper. So I'd feel better about this stuff not doing its spec than this stuff being as bad as it is, right? So yeah, that's kind of my outlook on it. I think it's a cool idea if it wasn't so damn expensive. Right, like that's the main problem I have with it is the price. Because if we look at other kits in the 139 to 100 quid price range, right, you can get 16 gigs of RAM with much better timings, much better frequencies, much better like, and heat spreaders, and like actual validation for the spec. And it's just like, I don't know why you'd get this, like why you would get this over even this, right? This is 3000, 15, 1535 G skill. Heat spreaders, 130 quid. But like, right, like that's better. This is better. 3200, 16, 16. Actually, there's a bunch of 3200 megahertz kits right here. Yeah, like this one, 3200, 16, 18, 18. So slightly lower price, higher frequency, same timings. Like, yeah, and then we have a Corsair one, same price, 3200, 16, 18, 18, 36. Like, sure, these might not be validated to work on AMD, but this isn't validated to do anything more than 2400 either, right? Like, that's the thing. This is literally like, if this doesn't do 2600 megahertz, well, whatever, it's spec'd for 2400. It's not meant to do 2600, right? So that's kind of the reason why I'm giving this such a hard time. Because if I buy this is at least spec'd for 3200. And even if it doesn't reach that, like, yeah, I like to just, yeah, this is apparently spec'd for Intel, Haswell E, and Skylake. So this would probably be pretty sketchy on Ryzen, but this, like, I feel the same way about this kit, especially after how bad my experience has been with the one I got. So, yeah, just figured I'd talk about this memory kit because I did buy it. It's just like it in my experience, it's been absolutely terrible. And yeah, I'm not, I'm really disappointed in myself, especially like when I started looking at all these other memory kits. It's just like I'm really sad that when I bought these, the Antec kit, why did an idiot me buy these instead? Right? Like, why didn't I buy these? That would have been actually like, this might not have sucked. Or I could have bought or this, right? Like, that would have saved me 40 quid, and that would have been nice. Because ultimately what the plan is these are probably going to end up in my daily system, because I want to upgrade to 32 gigs of RAM, and I'm on 16 right now. So I decided, well, since I'm going to be upgrading the memory in my daily anyway, I'll just buy a bunch of memory kits and test them, and then stick them in my daily. But yeah, now I'm like, there's so many other memory kits that would have probably been better that I could have also stuck in my daily. And yeah, so now I'm like super disappointed in myself, but it said B-die, so I bought it. So I guess it worked. Anyway, that is it for the video. So I guess thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, leave any comments, questions, suggestions down in the comment section below. And actually for this video especially, I'd love to hear, you know, suggestions and any kind of questions and anything, because as I've said, I suck at RAM overclocking. I don't know how to review RAM, and I'm trying to like kind of figure out some way of doing that. And this is currently like the idea I like, because this is relatively like, it's quick and dirty right now, right? I'm not like mem testing anything. I'm not going for bulletproof stability, but it's just like, okay, it passes Geekbench, and I'm not running max mem or anything, right? I'm not doing any of the stuff I do for like extreme overclocking where we shove like 2 volts into the sticks or something like that. It's just 1.5 volts for, or, you know, 1.5 volts or whatever voltage the kit itself maxes out at, because there are Micron ICs that'll stop at like 1.35 volts. But, or 1.32 or something like that. But, yeah, I'd love to hear some feedback on this, because I don't know like anything about RAM. Hell, if somebody thinks that the reason why my results are so bad is because I suck at RAM overclocking, I'd love to hear it. Because yeah, like, I don't know. I just want to, well, I want more information to be available on RAM overclocking, and since, you know, there's not a ton of it available, especially on like low-end memory kits, is like you never see anybody actually test like the overclocking. And I know why, because there's a ton of variance kit to kit, and like if you get different ICs or whatever. But I feel like if you just, you know, if you just piled on enough, like if you test enough kits over time, you'll start seeing some trends maybe. And so that's why I want to kind of keep doing this kind of memory testing, and just detailing everything about the kits, like what IC they are on, what PCB they are on, how they overclocked on Ryzen, how they like, I want to also do against Intel comparisons in the future, but with this one, it was just like, okay, this is the first one. We'll see how it works out. And, yeah, so that kind of thing. And lastly, if you'd, so yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. And lastly, if you'd like to support what I do here with actually hardcore overclocking, like testing really sketchy memory kits because they are Samsung V-Die. Man, I can't, I still, I'm so annoyed. I'm so very annoyed about that. Like, I really, really wish I just picked up an AFR kit, because if I had a good AFR kit, I could probably do better. But anyway, yeah, if you'd like to support what I do here with actually hardcore overclocking, I do have Patreon. There are t-shirts you can buy. You can find a link to both of those things down in the description below. And yeah, that is it for the video. So thanks for watching, and goodbye. And damn, this thing is long. Anyway, hopefully in the future they'll be shorter. And I'm also thinking of like making maybe like making a database type thing with all of the memory overclocking results for like Geekbench 3, and maybe some other benchmarks as well. But for now, it's just like Geekbench 3 is really quick and easy. So yeah, anyway, that's it. I'm actually going to go press the stop button now, because this is getting way too long. Goodbye.